What is going on, guys? James from Schumacher Enterprises back here at long last with a new video, and I have some company. I'm joined by the one and only bowling famous Luke Rosdahl. Luke, how you doing, man?
Doing pretty good.
So, yeah, thanks for letting me use your set down here in the basement for this whole shindig.
Yeah.
For those of you who don't know, Luke has been a hugely impactful figure in my bowling life of the last 4 or 5 years, something along those lines. He's one of the smartest people in the bowling world that I know, period. He knows a ton about ball reaction, kind of matching that to the situation. He's got a better eye for that than almost anybody else I know, period. So I figured having him right here, about an hour from where I live now, let's kind of leverage that and make a video out of this. So Luke, today we're going to be talking a little bit about the Open Championships. You and I are going in just under 2 months as of the time of this recording.
Yeah.
Excited to get to bowl doubles with you this year. That'll be a lot of fun. Hopefully we won't fry out too much. Make no promises there. But I guess kind of thinking first, this is going to be my first time at the National Bowling Stadium. It is in Reno this year, but can you explain a little bit about kind of the meta game of like what we can generally expect conditions wise and kind of how to approach that, because that's kind of the point of this video.
Yeah, so as far as the conditions go, they don't release the patterns, but at the same time, if you look at the pattern history for like the last, 10 years almost, they've kind of gotten it where they want it. And so they make minor, small, it's kind of like the US Open patterns every year. They have similar-ish patterns every single year. And the Open Championships are kind of like that. They have done something a little bit different the last couple of years, where the doubles and singles pattern has been the shorter pattern versus team. Team had historically been 38 to 40 feet, really flat, really difficult. And then the doubles and singles pattern was not quite as difficult, but a little bit longer.
Yeah.
But they flipped them.
Yeah, I remember last year the patterns were within a foot of each other, but they just changed the drop brush.
Mm-hmm.
And so team actually felt like the more blended pattern, and double singles, to my eye at least, felt like it was a little more, everything was going sideways off of the spot.
Yeah, doubles and singles last year was impossible on the left side, and team was really playable.
Yeah,
I thought team was pretty okay. And then the year before, even though they had it split, they were still doing the COVID protocols in 2021.
Oh yeah, that's right, because they had doubles and singles up in the center.
Yeah,
which was a much dirtier lane surface.
Yeah, and so that was a different experience, but it was more or less because of the different lane surfaces rather than the patterns.
Well, they flipped them that year as well.
Mm-hmm.
I think team was like 40 or 41, and doubles and singles was like 38.
Mm-hmm.
But regardless, it is still usually that same kind of very evenly tapered. And I'll include links in the description to patterns they've used in the last couple of years as a reference point. But it is kind of generally a more kind of even tapered, like tough but playable, I think is probably the best way to generally phrase it. And you definitely want to make sure you have a little bit more of an emphasis on control-oriented pieces, especially on the fresh half of your bag, which is going to be all 9 games for you and about half to 2/3 of the day for me, essentially, because I think, are you the only lefty in our group this year?
Chaz.
Oh, that's right. You've got Chaz as well.
Yeah, but otherwise we've had a couple lefties. Lucas Pajakovic had gone with us. But otherwise, it's just me and Chaz this year.
Okay, fair enough. And we've only got 2 teams, so that's 2 lefties out of the 10 of us. So at least y'all will be able to formulate a plan and kind of work together for a team event, because we'll obviously be on the same pair, and then go from there. So I guess digging into kind of the meat and potatoes of this a little bit more, like what is, I guess, obviously left side, right side, lower rev rate, lower speed, all the rev rate, all of the speed are kind of, our general philosophies are going to be different, but I suspect there's going to be at least some overlap. But I guess kind of what are some of the pieces you're going to be looking at taking with you this year? Because I think we're both taking 9. Is that right?
Yeah.
And we'll both kind of take the approach of maybe leave one in the hotel room for each squad, since there's an 8-ball limit per squad.
Yeah, I've done that before. But on the left side, I'm still kind of figuring things out, especially on tougher conditions. So I have taken 11 the last couple of years, and it just you can only take we drive, so I can just stick an extra couple balls in there.
Yeah.
But
what's another 3 miles per gallon?
Yeah. But so I would take in, and this worked really well when I was righty for team versus singles and doubles, because team was always the shorter, flatter pattern.
Yeah.
And then doubles and singles, you'd need some different stuff. So I would switch 3 ball. You could take a max of 8 balls in with you.
But it's per squad, and they don't recheck. They don't. you can take a completely different 8 if you wanted to, and
yeah, exactly.
It's completely allowed essentially.
Mm-hmm. So I would just switch 3 balls because I would put something in like an IQ Tour and maybe urethane, whatever else in, but that I'm never
for the shorter pattern.
Yeah, for team that I'm never going to throw on singles and doubles, and so I would just kind of switch things up. However, on the left side, you take urethane and you kind of fill it in with everything else.
You take urethane, throw it until it doesn't work, and then go cry in the corner. Basically, is that your strategy this year? Okay.
So yeah, I will be taking reactive balls, but if I'm throwing reactive balls, it's probably not going well.
Fair enough. So what all are you going to be taking? I mean, obviously we're a couple months out, and there could be a couple balls that come out between now and then that could be interesting. But I'm assuming, I know I've got a decent idea, and I'm assuming you do too. Kind of the general structure of the bags, like if you were packing right now, what would you be taking? Put it that way.
So I've already got 4 that are 5 actually that are going regardless, no matter what.
Yep.
I've got 2 different pitch blacks. I've got a fast pitch that I'm probably not going to use, but in case the rail's playable where I can just like point it.
Yeah, because that's you used that a few years ago at Swiss Trios, right?
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, or if there's any kind of friction on the ditch at all, that's something that'll be really useful. And then the Zen U, I've really gotten to like that ball. Then
so you're fully leaning into the lefty means at this point.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I might actually, to kind of double up, I might leave my mix at home and use my fast pitch as my spare ball because it just does not. Okay. I'm actually start using my fast pitch as my spare ball. Begin with,
I've honestly heard worse ideas.
Yeah, it just does not hook. So yeah. But then I think outside of that, a Pro Motion has to go because it's kind of like urethane plus. Yeah. It's almost like a Zen U with a little bit stronger core.
Yep. No, that definitely mirrors kind of what I felt from mine as well. Mm-hmm. Which unfortunately my Pro Motion cracked about a month ago. So yeah, I don't have one that I'm a little bit of a spoiler. I'm not planning on taking one at this point. But I've got we'll get there. Yeah. So anyways, Pro Motion, I have to think you probably won't get to it. Like you said, if you're throwing resin, it's probably not been a great time anyways, but I have to think a Fate's going to go with you.
Yeah, the Fate's definitely going to go because if reactive is in play whatsoever, it's clean up front, but it's pretty blendy down lane. If I need to jam it or keep it, it's very interesting. I think it'll give me a little bit of forgiveness out. It'll give me a little bit of forgiveness in. It's pretty good front to back as far as forgiveness too. If you get a little bit slow, it's blendy enough to get there. And if you get a little bit fast, it still hooks enough to kind of
for being a mid-strength shiny ball, medium to medium strong shiny ball with a not super low RG core is shockingly like more throwable and workable, I guess, for lack of a better term, than you would think by looking at a spec sheet for it. So
yeah, it's a little tamer Zen. It's not quite as torquey.
Yeah, a little slower, a little rounder, but kind of a similar usage window almost. Yeah, that makes complete sense.
So it's one that I would if there was a Pearl Pro Motion, not the Trend, of course, if it was like the same cover, Pearl Pro Motion, the Fate, I think would be it.
That'd be pretty. Yeah, the shot shapes definitely have a lot of resemblance to each other. So that makes a lot of sense. I guess it's what, 7 or 8, I think.
Yeah, the Idle Cosmos will also have to go to.
Oh yeah, the Cosmos.
I do have an Axiom sitting there, but it's so close to the Cosmos when I actually put some surface on the Cosmos. Yeah. So if I take that down to like 1,000, the Axiom tends to go a little forward sometimes. It's a little sharper than I want it to be. So the Cosmos kind of improves that idea for me.
The Cosmos is just essentially when you surface it, it's a slightly rollier, more forward Axiom almost, right?
It's more continuous. Yeah, it's less forward than the Axiom.
Yeah, sorry. Words are hard. My brain is not working today. Sorry. Not the best time to record a video when we're in a food coma after.
Hashtag need more coffee.
Hashtag shouldn't have had an entire platter of carbs at Iron Rail, but happens.
Yeah.
No, that's, for a lefty bag, that sounds pretty good. So you got 3 urethanes plus a Pro Motion, which is basically urethane or half urethane, and then
the Zen is half. So
the
2 pitch blacks,
pitch black, fast pitch,
Zen U
Pro
Motion. Those have to go. I probably will leave the mix at home, so I would take 4 more. So it would be the Fate, the Cosmos.
Are you throwing IQ Tours at all, or not really?
Maybe. I just rolled a new one to compare to the Ruby. Maybe, but I've also got some other maybes up there too. Like I've got an old Zero Gravity that's interesting because it's like
that's that mid RG low diff face.
Yeah, it's 255, 035, 36, 37.
Elephant in the room. What about your
Yeah.
Crux Prime? Do you think that's going to go, or
It's been too diggy the last few years. It's too much, and then it does also go a little bit forward. If I'm able to open the lane up at all, possibly.
If you're able to open the lane up, then you just be in the Cosmos.
Yeah, I'm going to be in the Cosmos or the Fate, possibly even the Zero Gravity.
Yeah.
Outside of that, my Volt Pearl might go too because it's pretty blendy. It's on the weaker side. I can kind of trap it from straighter. And if Urethane's too early and slow, and the Fate's too strong, Cosmos is too strong, Zero Gravity is too whippy, that is more or less. Volt Pearl is kind of like a High Road Pearl type of strength overall reaction, somewhere between a High Road Pearl.
It looks kind of like a slightly more stable High Road Pearl that kind of tumbles a touch more as well.
Yeah.
At the same time, kind of if a High Road Pearl and a Spectre had a kid, probably not too far off from that. So
it's tame and it's pretty smooth, but it's really controllable and stable.
Yeah,
like you were saying. And so I think that with those balls, I think I will have something to work with, and I would imagine if I had to predict what I was going to be throwing right now, it's going to be my 4-inch pitch black or my Zen-U.
So what are the differences between your pitch blacks? Because I know, like I saw a post from Spencer Robarge bowling. He bowled the PTQ down in Shawnee, and his post was like, "Yeah, I bowled well. I just didn't strike enough, didn't make the cut, but it happens." But I threw a variety of different surface pitch blacks.
Yeah,
and that was that was literally his post. So, I mean, obviously you're only taking 2 pitch blacks. Like, how do they differ for you? Like, how are they set up? What do they do differently?
One of the one that I just drilled a few months ago to compare the Zen-U, it's 4x2, so really strong, beefy layout. I'm going to leave it at 1,000 grit. My other one, I drilled pin in the ring finger, so it's like 4 3/4 by 3.5.
Okay, so a little weaker and a little slower, essentially.
Yeah, so it's definitely one. My new one flares just a tiny bit. Yeah. So if I need like
the 4-inch.
Yeah, so if I need like traction, I can throw that one. But if I need a traction without like the length and shape of the Zen-U, but the other one, if I just want it to be straight up urethane, roll over those same oil tracks and just kind of walk it down in, it's going to hook more than my fast pitch. My fast pitch is going to, so I have pitch black, strong pitch black, weak pitch black, and then I have like Zen-U that kind of hooks like a pitch black and shapes a little bit, and then I have the fast pitch that's a step down from that.
Okay,
so the pitch blacks are earlier and then a whole lot slower. The Zen-U and the fast pitch are longer and have a little bit more shape, but it's just stacking the strengths within those different.
That makes sense. A little bit kind of shaped it, like stacking shape plus traction to kind of get a few different zones almost, more or less. It's kind of, but still within that, like obviously lower speed lefty, you're playing the control game no matter what, especially, considering there's going to be possibly just you on your side for double singles and definitely just you and Chaz for team. And I'm assuming Chaz is going to be playing the lefty game as well with a bunch of urethanes.
Yeah, he's gonna be throwing urethane too. I don't swing the ball as I've been getting straighter and straighter. Generally, I prefer that than trying to hook the whole lane. And Chaz does the same thing. He just throws it harder. Yeah. He's got a lot higher speed than I do, but we're going to be playing in the same general spot, and so I'm going to give him stability up front. He's going to help give me some shim down lane. Yeah. And so I think it's going to work out.
Should be able to kind of make each other better, essentially.
Yeah.
As the day goes on. Yeah, that makes complete sense. So I guess on my side, obviously it is going to be a little bit different. This is my first year going with this group. I've been going with a different group from North Carolina in past years. But like you, I'm also kind of, knowing that you're driving out there and I'm going to be sending a bag with you, that gives me a little more flexibility than I've had in past years, just flying with 6. I'm actually going to have a 9 with me as well, which would be kind of nice. But obviously not knowing exactly what my cross is going to be for double singles and, still, there is that. But not knowing exactly what my cross is going to be and how they're going to play out in that regard. And obviously I'm assuming that, it's definitely going to be 8 righties for team, and I'm assuming 4 4 or 5 righties for double singles, depending on who we catch as our crossing partners. So there is a little more, the range of outcomes, I guess, on my side, for lack of a better term, is a little bit greater in terms of how the lanes could transition.
Yeah.
But there's also just going to be more transition in general, and I have a much heavier hand than you do, so that kind of brings in some different. I need a bigger range of gear. I feel like that is generally kind of how things work versus you. Like I'll start. Actually, let's just kind of start kind of from the top of my bag and work down in terms of traction. So I think it's kind of working. Actually, let's work from kind of fresh to burn, kind of go that progression and kind of look at it that way.
And we can talk about the who we've got going too, because that does that will play, and we'll go through the Arsenal stuff, and then where the people play kind of plays into, what you're going to pick, when you're going to be using it, what you're going to be using.
Yeah, exactly. So I think the first two, and one of these I definitely saw coming. The other one didn't click until about a week ago. Is having a couple of really kind of slow, rolly, tumbly, super control the lane asymmetrical type shapes, almost like, for lack of a better term, like very rolly, gets into a tumble without creating a bunch of whip off the spot. The Crux Prime is one that I've taken in the past, and I've got actually drilled a fresh one about 4 months ago that I've been really liking. So I think that's going to have to go. But then the other one that's kind of come back into favor, for lack of a better term, for me is the Nova. I drilled one last summer, and that's actually kind of re-impressed me as I've been making some physical game changes. So, but looking for those kind of different control the lane options with a couple different levels of traction, essentially. And this is, the hard part about not releasing patterns, and I think you touched on this earlier, is it's a little bit of a black box, and you just kind of have to lean on your eyes a little bit more for what the lanes are actually giving you. And I think one of the big variables that I don't have a good feel for is how dirty the lane surface is in Reno at the National Bowling Stadium.
Yeah, they actually change the lanes every few years, every 4 or 5 years. So it doesn't get.
So it's not going to. So we're expecting it to be a crisper, not super tracked out type of lane surface.
Yeah.
Okay, that's fair. So then actually the Crux Prime might end up working really well. I know when the PBA has been there in the past, guys have tended to throw bigger balls there than most of the time on tour on average, just for that exact reason. So we've got the Crux Prime that's one where I'm almost going to use that. Like if I need a really, really early ball to score with, then I can use that. But the other side is if I need something to really create a hook spot in practice, which is something that comes into play. And I think you've made videos on conditioning a lane. Is using the ball to create a hook spot, and something with a big cover like the Crux Prime could be very, very good for that. Just pile on some extra surface and throw it up the 5 board for 5 minutes, and boom, you got a hook spot.
And that's what I've taken it before. I've taken that at 500 grit specifically for conditioning, just practice, maybe the first few games of the first frame, or the first few frames of the first game. Just to condition the lanes, because super wide footprint, super strong cover, and so it's going to suck stuff off the lane like crazy.
Yeah, exactly. And then, so we got the Crux Prime, we got the Nova, a few kind of, I guess, heavier shapes, for lack of a better term. But I think, especially knowing kind of how I'm going to be playing the lanes, I think having a few rounder kind of IQ-ish. This is a Nano Pearl. I actually took a Nano Pearl a couple of years back. Didn't use it that much, but it looked very good. So a couple kind of rounder shapes. I think one, and this is one that I'm kind of flipping back and forth on a little bit. I want to get your take on, is Axiom versus Phase 2. I've been using a pin down Phase 2 quite a bit recently and really liking it, but thought has crossed my mind of getting a little more punch with the Axiom. So I don't know kind of what your thoughts are for my bag in that regard.
Yeah,
I do have one drilled, but I also have a blank one that we could put a different layout on if we need to.
Yeah, I think having seen your Axiom recently, it is, as you got some use on it, it is more stable, kind of round. But the Phase 2, it depends on how many games you have on it too. Because if you drill a dead fresh one, it's nuts.
Yes.
But as soon as you get some games on it, it's pretty clean and arky and pretty blendy. It hooks enough, but it's blendy down lane. It's almost like a EJ with his Venom Shock on the show the other day, in Shawnee, where it just kind of, it gets through the fronts and then it arcs down lane. But if you get a little bit out, it's strong enough to get back. And if you get it in, it's blendy enough to kind of sit there. And so The Axiom, I think, it's going to go. However, if you get into some angle things with the phase 2, it could wiggle.
True.
So I think that the
kind of depends on the rest of the bag then to a certain extent, right?
Yeah, I think it does depend on the rest of the bag because if you have anything that overlaps one way or the other with either of them.
Yeah, and that's something that I've tried to emphasize. Excuse me, that I've tried to emphasize more in my own arsenal building is I want to make sure that regardless of what I take, and even though I am taking 9 this year, which is more than I usually have, I would rather take a well-defined bag with specific use cases, and almost like I'd almost rather have gaps that are a little bit too big than a little bit too small.
Yeah,
because when the lanes are this hard and you get one crack at it, you almost just want to kind of play to predictable, trusted shapes.
Yeah,
hit the pocket, fill your frames, and hope for the best.
That kind of explains my bag. But
Yeah,
for you,
exactly.
Your versatility can kind of fill in, and depending on where you're going to be at, you might need some very specific things in very specific places. And if you take kind of a more standardized thing, if the lanes transition a bit different or people do different things than you expect, you could end up trapping yourself with too similar of ball reactions, where on the left side, I pretty well know what I'm going to be walking into. And so I need small variations of the same thing because I'm going to be playing pretty well straight up 5.
Yeah. And the nice thing is too, and this is something I think not enough people think about, is South Point and the National Bowling Stadium are both the regular pins and GS pin setters.
Yeah.
So the way, like this is something I think might actually, I don't know if, have you made a classroom video on like different, how to get your ball through the pins in different situations? I don't know if you have or not.
No, I don't think so.
Okay. But that is something that does kind of bear a little bit of consideration, is like GS versus A2s are going to give you different types of hits in some situations. But just smoother rolly shapes tend to work very, very well on GS pen setters because they tend to be pretty favorable for kind of the snap 10 for righty, snap 7 for lefty type of hits. And so even though I've never bowled at the stadium before, I still have a decent idea of what the pins are going to want to see in terms of shot shapes.
Yeah.
So that does make things at least a little bit easier, for lack of a better term. So I guess for now, let's kind of pencil in the phase 2, but I think, as we talk through the rest of this, that might change a little bit. The other piece, and is sitting here, but as of now, I'm not planning on taking one, is IQs. I do have an IQ Tour Solid. I don't have a Nano Pearl, which is the ball that's sitting here. I just grab it because it's pretty and kind of semi-relevant. But the one I've been leaning on a lot recently is I've got an Obsession Tour drilled pretty strong. It's the same 4x2 pin as what you've got on your new pitch black. So probably going to be taking that, but I've also got the MV Tour, which is going to provide a little more punchiness down lane, but still the same kind of mid lane control.
Yeah.
So kind of the way I'm thinking about it, and I'm curious to get your thoughts on this, is I've kind of got a control forward rolly ball and a more archy continuous ball, but duos of that with the Prime and phase 2, and then the Nova, and whether it's the Obsession Tour or the MV Tour, something like that. So kind of my general thought, and I guess, does this, make sense in your head as well, as kind of similar traction, but slightly different, variations on shot shape that'll let me play different zones, is kind of my general thought there.
Yeah. I think the Obsession Tour and the IQ Tour would overlap, but the IQ wouldn't give you the asymmetric kind of torque or forgiveness / predictability down lane. If you can't, because you can open the lane up a little bit with the Obsession. If it looks good, you can continue to chase it left. However, with the Tour,
it can get behind it pretty quick.
Yeah.
Especially given that I do have more ball speed and I'm kind of getting it through the fronts a little better now than I used to. That is my concern with something like an IQ Tour Solid, is as good as it is. And I actually used an IQ Tour Solid last year in team event, and the ball looked much better than I did. And I'll just leave it at that with regards to my scores. You can look it up if you want to. Let's not talk about game 3. But, it happens.
Then the NV Tour, I think you might have some overlap there with like an Axiom. Believe it or not, the NV Tour differential is a lot lower, but I think
the shot shapes are close.
The early round strong, it's going to hook type of thing
Yeah.
I think that those would have some overlap.
That is definitely possible, yeah, and that's something to think about with kind of that interaction with the phase 2 as well. But at the same time, I do tend to be better from just a pure execution perspective when I have a ball that I can just roll at the spot and know it's going to hook off of it, and I don't feel like I have to help it or baby my speed or anything like that. So even though I do have the kind of control the lane pieces with like my Prime and my Novas, something like the NV Tour or an Axiom might be really, really good for that reason, because I can just kind of stand left, roll it at the spot, and not have to help it a whole lot, and know that it's going to give me stability, but enough punch to still get through the pins as I kind of need to chase it through transition.
Yeah, and there probably will be some urethane too.
Yeah.
So having something diggy that's going to go rather than possibly be a little wiggly down lane, because Ryan Klaus can throw pretty much anything, but he was not in the greatest place last year, not having urethane. A lot of them used urethane last year.
Okay.
Ramsden can use urethane. Bruce will probably use urethane.
Yeah.
Derek Lewis, I don't know if you've seen him bowl before, but
Bowled him once or twice. Yep.
Yeah. So he can do whatever he wants to. Also, he can really point it down the side. So I think there is going to be some there, and Dallas Baldridge is probably going to use urethane.
Okay.
All the times we've gone with him, he's just kind of pointed a pitch black from fifth arrow.
Fifth arrow.
5, yeah.
Oh boy.
Yeah.
Like emergency meeting.
from 5 or 10 to 5.
Yeah.
Sometimes
But
if he's got it
straightish with urethane essentially.
So there's probably going to be urethane. So something earlier that's going to hook rather than hit the back end and then wiggle.
Yeah.
Or push through, something that's going to be more stable earlier that will not be as affected by the carry down.
That won't give up if it sees a little bit of oil an extra 10 feet down the lane type of idea. Yeah, no, that makes complete sense. And that's I've had a chance to throw an NV Tour already, and I think it does fit that idea pretty well. So assuming it works out, which I don't have mine yet, but hopefully soonish. Hopefully that'll kind of fill that role for me pretty well. One other ball that I've been thinking about taking, and I want to get your take on this. So not something you would think about normally in a situation like this, but I'm thinking I might take my top speed with me just to get kind of, same idea as that NV Tour type of ball, just a little more length and a little more giddy up. If I down lane gets a little tight, but I need to kind of inside in it from left before they get crispy.
Yeah.
Is the thought there.
Yeah. Or if you need something, again, that's just not so early. Yeah. If the urethane beats up the front and you have to get inside of the urethane track, but don't want the wiggle of something that's going to be early and then smoother.
Yep.
It's going to push it just a little bit further down. So you can kind of either bump or kind of edge up against that urethane track.
Yeah.
And kind of use the friction for stability early, and then the shim down lane basically to even out the ball reaction. So even though top speed, you think it's a little bit longer, a little bit sharper, but if you use the early friction in the track to make it a little bit earlier, and then you use the carry down or the shim down lane to blend it out a little bit more, then you those things kind of offset.
Yeah, no, that makes complete sense. And I feel like my top speed as well is still pretty strong. It's a little bit, mine looks on the smoother side relative to most that I have seen.
Yeah.
So I think that'll kind of work in my favor as well. And, it's even beyond like the theoretical applications, it is a very, very trusted ball. Like I think almost half of the games I've bowled since I got it have been with that ball. Yeah. So I've got enough games on it that it's going to be a little more blended out too, which will be kind of nice, I think. Another thing I'm thinking about taking, and this is if I was taking 6, there's no chance I would bring it, but bringing 9, I think I kind of have to think about it, is urethane. Got a pitch black, I've got a Zenu, I've got a purple hammer as well. So I guess, do you think it's worth looking at in my bag for nationals, given that I am taking a few more? And if so, kind of, do you think I should lean more towards traditional urethane or something like the Zenu?
I think you should probably go Zenu, hit it with some surface, because you're gonna if it's early and it kind of traps you in the the angle thing, to where a pitch black's gonna trap you a little bit.
Yeah.
And I think that having the length and the shape, but just a little bit blendier, and you can take it to 1,000. Yeah. And you can basically make it urethane without being like a pitch black that's gonna roll early and then just kind of
just kind of blah down lane.
Yeah, and there's a lot of them that are going to be throwing. I think the Purple Hammer is almost a little bit too clean and a little bit too sharp.
Yeah, and mine's a Hopkinsville as well, which is definitely weaker than the Mexico balls, at least kind of based on. I haven't thrown the Mexico purples, but they do look a little bit stronger than the Hopkinsville portion.
So
mine's not one of the illegal ones. It's okay. It's not too soft.
Yeah.
But,
and I think the Zen U bridges the gap between the length and the shape of the Purple Hammer and how early and slow the pitch black is.
Yeah.
The Zen U is earlier than the Purple Hammer, a little bit blendier. And I think that probably just fits. And we'll take a look at it, obviously, when we go to practice.
Yeah, for sure. And I remember when we shot for my Zen U video, I think we were on the 2019 double singles pattern. Is that right?
Yeah.
And it actually gave me a level of pocket control and presence that I haven't really had with anything else. And that was actually kind of cool to see. So maybe it is worth a look on something like that. I hadn't really given it a ton of thought, honestly. But
yeah, I think with as much urethane as people are probably going to be throwing.
Yeah, that makes sense. And this kind of urethane does, for me, tend to be a little bit more of a survival tool than anything else, I guess, for lack of better terms. I tend to be better when I can get into resin a game to a game and a half before the rest of the field. But there is definitely also an element of, especially in the team event, there's an element of team play and kind of conditioning the lanes as a team to make it a more favorable circumstance, essentially, for us later on in the day. And if the Zen U kind of gives me another tool in that side of things, that might actually be really beneficial. So
yeah, and we are going to do 2 of the team practice sessions. We've done that before, and for those of you that are going down, maybe for the first time or whatever else, get there a day or 2 early and watch some stuff. Go get one of those team practice sessions. It's $100 for an hour, but if you get all 10 people to show up, it's $10 a piece.
Exactly.
To bowl for an hour, and then you can actually. We've done this before where we've broken it down and we've had we're going to beat up the track or beat up 5 board on this lane, and then we're going to throw urethane kind of right up 15 on this lane.
Yeah.
See with which conditioning idea works better. And then having the second practice session, we can get even further down the one side or the other, get warmed up. Most people bowl on house shots all the time. And so just getting on something that's a little bit tougher and then, actually bowling, warming yourself back up, because I'm going to be in a car for a few days, airplane and hanging out and whatever else. And so just bowling something.
Getting in the mind, even just like the way I've approached bowling, because I'll usually do at least a few bowlers journal squads as well, which is on the double singles pattern is sure, I'm trying to score, but equally I'm trying to just kind of get myself comfortable and in the mindset of, okay, I'm not bowling on a house shot anymore. And just kind of using it to kind of reconfigure my brain and kind of get comfortable with the idea again has been a very, very helpful approach.
Yeah, the bowler's journal is kind of normally it's like $70 or something. So it's nice you can bowl an event, but it's also some nice practice too at the same time. And if you can do that beforehand. If you want to just get warm and get loose, because it's going to be in the same bowler's journal and the team practice session is downstairs where they used to do the 40 frame game, for those of you that have been to Reno.
Okay, got it.
So it's still in the bowling stadium.
Yeah.
So just getting in there and getting comfortable with the venue and the, everything, because it's a whole lot bigger and grander than a normal bowling alley. So just getting in there and getting the butterflies out, if nothing else. But you can also, as soon as you're done bowling your events, go back and bowl the bowler's journal again and actually try to score. That so you can kind of
catch it on both sides almost. Yeah, and hopefully eat some good food in the middle. But we'll have to pick your brain on Reno restaurants. I haven't been there yet.
Yeah.
So we've got a pretty good arsenal set up for me so far. I got the Crux. Just kind of running off a couple assumptions. We got a couple control lane options.
This definitely has to go.
Yeah, my new Crux Prime is a complete non-negotiable.
The Nova has to go.
Crux Prime, Nova. I lean phase 2 just because of comfort. As much as anything else, and mine is a little more bedded in and is pinned down, so it blends pretty well.
Yeah.
I assume one of the Obsession and the Envy is going to come, and then the Zen U.
Yeah.
And so that gets me a pretty solid list right there. And then I can't kill my hand enough to use urethane for spares, so I'm going to take a plastic ball. That's just a complete non-negotiable. I have to have plastic. I am I've done tracking stuff in Pen Pal on my phone. I am objectively better with plastic than with urethane for anything else. And so then that leaves us a couple of free slots. And at this point, I think we're kind of looking – we've got a bunch of different options that'll give me plenty of coverage for early to mid blocks. I think we need to kind of look for, last 6 to 8 frames of team event and the last 2 to 3 games of double singles, depending on how they break down. So then we're probably looking at a couple of couple of different shiny options. I know I touched on one for you that I think needs to come for me as well as the Fate. Just it's this really, really nice blend of length and control and stability and forgiveness, kind of like an IQ that I can get through the pins a little better, but without seeing the fronts as much at the same time. So almost like a baby Cosmos to a certain extent is kind of how that acts for me.
I kind of run those in tandem too. If I need something earlier, slower, stronger than the Fate, I go Cosmos, and if I need the same idea but a little cleaner and sharper,
no, that makes complete sense. And then the last ball, and this is one that I'm kind of waffling on, and the thoughts, got a couple different thoughts that I could go here. I've got a 5-inch Ocean Vibe that's been really, really good for super late block, really dirty situations. But then there's also the thought that I've run into this a few times recently where I need something that'll get down the lane better than my top speed or, top speed Obsession Tour type ball, but be a little firmer and have a little more mid lane stability than something like what my Fate gives me. So, I mean, the thoughts crossed my mind of maybe drilling something like an Absolute and taking that, maybe with a little bit of surface on it, just for kind of a late block kind of get left and fade it option if the mids go and I need to get something that'll push through that better. You think that would be something that would come into play on the right side?
Yeah, I think so. If nothing else, the fronts with the rev rate that you have, because Klaus revs it up, Bruce revs it up, Ramsden revs it up, Derek can rev it up. Dallas Baldridge revs it up. He's going to be using urethane. He revs it up. Jason Crouch revs it up.
Oh, I forgot Crouch is in our team. Holy crap.
Yeah.
Okay. So definitely need a couple of shiny options.
You got a bunch of
especially if I catch like Crouch and Ramsden for double singles.
Yeah, and moving depending on what the lanes do, moving left may not really be there. And when they first announced the Absolute, I thought something cleaner than R2S and a big ASIM cover core. That sounds terrible. And it's not terrible at all.
It doesn't match what you see on the spec sheet, especially if you get a little bit of surface.
It really doesn't. The cover acts a little stronger than it is, because that's what I was thinking. It was going to be too clean. And then that all that torque with that big core, but the way that they design the core kind of reduces the torque a little bit. It's almost like if you put a cleaner, sharper cover on like the Nova core or something like that.
Something that doesn't just like grind to a halt and insta flip on you essentially.
And I think that's probably why they're promoting it so hard, is because I think they really took a long time specifically because they've gone through so many balls like that, like the Astro and the UC2 and the RSTX2, Halo Pearl. I mean, you can go back and you find all these big ASIM cores with these cleaner, sharper covers on them that people use a lot because you get the stability and some torque out of the core, but you get clean and shape out of the cover. But they have kind of gone back and forth because some of them want to lock up or some of them want to go a little too forward. And so you can be in between on them. They can either be too long, go too long and then jerk, or they can just go too long and wiggle,
or it just kind of sees the mids but then locks up and goes forward, which is that's something I had problems with on most of I think I drilled 2 or 3 different UC2s and pretty much had that problem on all of them. Because it just kind of would get a little too quick and forward. The Absolute seems, to my eye, to almost split the difference between the X2 and the UC2.
Yeah, it really does, because it's not as early and torquey as the UC2 from a core perspective. The core's blendier. The cover also doesn't jerk as much on friction, but it's also somehow kind of stable in the oil too. So it's not one of those that's going to see it early and jerk on friction, or do too long and wiggle.
And that's one thing that I've been trying to get away from, is the miss a little bit in the oil and you 2-8-10. That terrifies me. And so finding ways to get away from that has been very, very, as I've found ways to get away from that, I feel like I've gotten better over the last several months in particular. So having ways to kind of protect against that is a bigger priority for me than most, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and I think that basically what it is, it's a step down from it's the same ball as your top speed. It's just a step down in strength.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the thought behind, possibly getting one of those and adding that to my bag. So that definitely makes a lot of sense. So your bag, all of the urethane, a couple of resin pieces that are going to be blended.
and some what ifs that I'm probably not going to use, but realistically, if I do use them, those are ones that are going to get used.
And I think that is kind of a general good way to summarize it, is you want to make sure to have some good, really solid, trusted control pieces, a few pieces for later in the day if you need them.
Mm-hmm.
But then if you have the space to cover a couple of those really crucial what-if situations where it's like, you taking your Fate, for example.
Yeah.
Odds of you throwing it,
Very
5%.
low. Yeah.
If you need it and you don't have it, you are screwed.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the same thought as me with the Absolute and the Fate, honestly, on my side of the lane is I probably won't throw them very much, but if I need them and I don't have them, I'm done.
Yeah.
And, especially it's a little different if you're taking 6 than 9. Which actually I think we've been going we've gone long enough. Let's go a little bit longer. So let's play a little bit of a game here. We're flying instead of driving, and we're purely limited to 6.
Mm-hmm.
What goes?
So I take my strong pitch black. I leave the other one at home.
Okay.
I take that one. I take the fast pitch because the fast pitch and my weak pitch black are close enough that the fast pitch is just a little bit longer, a little bit more on the back end. The other one's just a little bit earlier, a little bit smoother. Realistically speaking, they're kind of on top of each other. They're just slightly different shapes.
Yeah.
So I take my strong pitch black. I also take my fast pitch that can double as my spare ball, basically.
Yep.
I definitely take the Zen U. That has to go. Promotion goes, Fate goes, and the Volt Pearl goes.
Okay, so you're essentially dropping the Cosmos and your strong pitch black.
Yeah.
Which you can probably trick between your Zen U and your Fate. You can probably trick that out enough if I had to guess.
Because I think that the thing that will kick the Cosmos out is just the overall strength.
Yeah.
Just the straight up overall strength. And then something like that zero gravity, probably not going to use.
Oh yeah, the gravity, that's the other ball.
And it's close enough to my Fate, realistically speaking. It's not, but it is. The covers, the kind of general shapes, what they do on the lane, the zero is a little blendier. It's not because it's got a cleaner cover. It's E-Track solid.
Okay.
Or ERG solid, which is basically E-Track solid.
So for a modern comparison, it's probably not far off from the TNT in terms of raw cover strength.
Yeah. Okay. It's TNT levels of cover strength, but it's kind of like a Honey Badger
lower
core.
diff Honey Badger core almost.
Yeah. So the Fate is more cover and similar-ish core without the torque.
Yeah.
The zero gravity is a little cleaner.
So the zero gravity is kind of your more definitive Fate, almost, for lack of a better term.
Yeah.
Like if your Fate is close, you just need something a little more punch and giddy up and firmness. Then you go to the zero.
The zero shape's exactly like my reality check. It's just not nearly as strong.
Okay. Yeah. No, that makes a lot of sense.
So it does, and so that would be really good given the right circumstances.
Yeah.
But I'm not going to need the strength of the Cosmos. Probably not going to need the overall, torque of the zero. And then that weaker pitch black is probably not going to get thrown anyway.
Yeah.
And the fast pitch is probably only going to get thrown at spares, but it can do double
but
duty.
You have that's kind of a what if option where if the rail is there, then you need to play the rail, and that's the ball to do it with.
Yeah, I can do it with that one, but I can't do that with my Knicks.
Yeah, no, that actually makes a whole lot of sense. So for my side, obviously I built out 9, but if I was going to trim down to 6, my gut instinct is I'd probably drop one of my Crux Prime and my Nova, just so I don't have two like super control the lane options. I would lean towards Nova just because, kind of like you were saying, is like the monster covers haven't played very much the last couple of years.
And you're probably just not going to need that much traction for very long. If you do need it, you can fake it for like 6 frames with the Nova.
Exactly.
Easier than like, okay, well, I can't use this anymore.
Yeah, that's kind of the general thought there. I think the Fate would have to go for sure, and then Spare Ball for sure. So that's Nova. I lean towards probably the Obsession of the NV Tour just because those are control-oriented balls with that don't flare too much, but I can still get through the pins for a pretty substantial amount of time.
Yeah.
So then that gets me Nova, Obsession or NV Tour, Fate, Spare Ball. So then what would you do for the last 2 at that point?
I would probably take the Zen U. I know that that's still not entirely something that you're up with, but if everybody else is using urethane, it's going to be hard to not have that and try to make. You could probably make your Nova work.
Probably.
If everybody else is throwing urethane, but I think the Zen U has to go, and then probably, again, something like an Absolute.
Yeah, absolutely. Probably. So that's one interesting question there is I've got a few kind of pairs of stronger, weaker of the same general shape or stronger higher traction, lower traction of the same lane play philosophy. Crux Prime and Nova, Phase 2 and Obsession Tour / Envy Tour, and then Top Speed and Absolute. So it's kind of, I guess, for someone like me, would you tend to lean more towards the weaker, more control-oriented side of that, and then make it up with surface if I need to cover the fresh?
Yeah, because if you get yourself out of that, like, as you throw the ball, it's going to lane shine. And so if you start with a weaker cover with more traction, as the lanes dry out, it's also going to kind of weaken.
It's going to kind of come to me a little bit.
Yeah, whereas
for reference, like this Crux Prime is what, 2000, I'm assuming? Is that about right? 2000-ish? 1000, 2000, somewhere in there?
Oh, yeah.
Versus this is lane shined. Mm-hmm. And so this is kind of a good illustration of, like, if you were to take this Nano Pearl surfaces to this, and throw it for 5 or 6 games, it's going to be back to looking like this again.
Yeah.
And so that kind of, you want to make sure you have enough surface to pick up and blend properly on the fresh out at nationals, but at the same time, as they transition, the transition can be much starker and harsher in terms of what you need, in terms of your progressions. You need to be almost a little more aggressive with those sometimes at nationals than what you'll see in a typical house shot or even challenge pattern league at home.
Yeah, because of the volume, there's going to be volume, and it's going to be flat, so you're going to see a whole lot more surface than you regularly see. Too much surface will shine back up. Too much cover is just too much cover.
Yeah, exactly. So no, that makes complete sense. So, but yeah, I'll be back. I might actually see about doing a practice live stream with Luke at some point before we go out. I think we bowl the Monday, Tuesday right after Easter.
Yeah, 11th, 12th or something like that.
10th, 11th, somewhere in that range. Sometime in like early mid-April. Mm-hmm. But might try to get a practice stream out. We'll definitely have at least one more video recapping what I'm decided on as my final bag. I might try to get you back in for that as well if timing allows.
Yeah, we can have some practice sessions and then get back and see what we figured out.
Yeah, and then definitely want to get unfortunately with the USBC rules, you can't get video while you're out there. You can pay for it, but you won't get it until the tournament's done because they have to hide the oil patterns because USBC has no logic sometimes. But with that said, I'm definitely going to be buying the video package that'll record our entire event, and I'll try and get that posted once we get those videos at the end of the tournament run, which I think ends in July, right? I think, July. So with that said, I'll definitely have some more content coming both before and after the Open Championships. If you have any questions down in the comments, please let us know there. Check out Luke's channel. I'll figure out an annotation or put you in the description or something else as well. Yeah. If you are at all serious about learning more about bowling and ball motion and you don't watch his videos, then you're doing something incredibly wrong. You need to reevaluate your life choices. So, Luke, thanks so much for the help today. It's been a lot of fun, and we'll see y'all in Reno.
All right.
Peace.